Hey guys, what's up? I'm Noah, this is Analog Resurgence, and welcome to the 10K Extravaganza home developing video thing. Roll it! Alright, in honor of this Analog Resurgence project hitting 10,000 subscribers, today I will be doing a little bit of a heavily requested topic: home developing black and white 35mm film. I will be using Patterson home developing tanks, and recently I went out and shot a couple of rolls of 35mm black and white film in this Pentax K1000 camera here. Now these rolls I actually used reloadable bulk canisters because I have a large roll of super expired Plus X motion picture black and white negative 35mm film. The results might not be super pristine from this stuff, but this is just kind of the first video that I have ever done that will show off actually home developing, and hopefully I will have good results and this won't be a huge waste of time. So this will involve me doing some loading of the tanks and then the actual developing. Also, while I was out shooting, this K1000 decided to stop working properly about halfway through, so I'm gonna have some blurry, really not composed at all shots on these rolls. Just as a technical exercise, this is going to be a good one. Okay, so first of all, these are Patterson home developing tanks. Now in order to use them, the only part that you need to do in complete darkness is to actually load the film onto the reels that go into the tank. Once you kind of close up the top piece here, then you can pour the chemicals in, and you can do it in a room with the lights on, and you don't have to worry about exposing the film by mistake. Actually loading the film onto plastic reels that go into the tank has to be done in complete darkness, or else your film will be ruined. So you can get tanks that are different sizes that hold different reels, so you can develop different amounts of film. And these are the plastic reels that go inside of them. There are two pieces that kind of slot together, and they are this size for 35mm, or you can actually kind of spread them apart and you can put larger film on them as well. And when they're this size, then you can actually take them and put medium format 120 rolls on here as well. So to get started, I'm just going to do an example of test loading a roll to kind of show off exactly how it looks when you're putting a roll onto a reel. And then I have to use this changing bag, which is a light-proof film bag that I will be able to use to put the reels and the tanks in to actually load my film. But to show off kind of how this whole thing works, I'm going to use this test roll that has nothing on it, but it will be destroyed as soon as I open it up, just to show you guys how to load them onto the plastic reels. And I'm just going to wind this film back into the canister itself, and then I'm going to take a can opener. And you can use pretty much any can opener that you can find, or you can use whatever really works for you in the darkness. So if we just kind of pop it off here, then I will be able to completely remove one end of the film canister and take my film out. And then it just kind of slides out, and then I have it ready to go. Now in the darkness, I like to kind of crease this end here and make a clean, kind of straight-ish cut, so that then I have gotten rid of the kind of leader piece of the film. Now there are little ball bearings kind of at the beginning and notches here where you just kind of feed it, so it will kind of rotate like this, and that's how it should go. And so you kind of want to line up the notches at the beginning and just kind of thread your film onto there. It might take a little bit of work to just get it over the ball bearings that are going to kind of hold it into place, but just be able to kind of pull it over, and it will kind of slide over that. And then you should just kind of freely be able to rotate it along, kind of get it started. You can pull it a decent way around. And you want to make sure that it's sitting properly under these notches here. And then we just rotate. And these kind of auto load, or as much as you can really auto load the film. And sometimes it will give you some resistance, and you just want to be careful because you don't really want to damage it as it's going on. So as long as it's kind of sitting on there nice and smoothly at the beginning, then you're good to go. Now if you get stuck, then you just kind of want to carefully kind of pop it off and try and roll it back onto the original roll. And it does sometimes take a few tries, and then you can just kind of slowly wiggle it back and forth, and it will just thread the film onto the reel for you. And then once you kind of hit the end, then you are ready to take your scissors again in the dark and just kind of cut this last little bit off the roll here. Then just make sure that it's properly loaded, and as long as it's kind of moving smoothly and you can feel that it's loaded on there properly, then it's ready to go into your canister. And then there's a little stem in here that will slide onto the roll, and then it will sit in there, and then the top piece will go back on, and it will just rotate and click into place, and then it won't fall out, and then you're ready to load the chemicals and develop your film with the lights on in a fully lit room. So unfortunately, that's just my test roll though, so I can't actually use that because that's just a sample roll to be able to show off how you do it in complete light. But now this part I have to do in full darkness. So I'm going to use two types of developers in order to test the film. I'm going to use Tmax developer and HC110 developer, and I'm going to develop one roll in Tmax and one roll in HC110. So I'm actually going to load two tanks, one roll in one tank and one roll in the other tank. And now I'm going to use, I have an airy changing bag. You can get changing tents, which are bigger. In the process, I will be answering some questions here from the people who watch the videos on Instagram and on Twitter and stuff on YouTube, the comments as well. So I load in here. I'm gonna throw in both tanks here. And it has two armholes here, so I'm just gonna put my arms in here. What is your favorite film stock and least favorite film stock? Asked by Analog Riga. So favorite film stock, I really like to shoot slide film. I don't shoot it as much as I'd like to because it's expensive, and I really like Velvia 50. That is probably some of my favorite stuff that always makes me kind of like be amazed when I see it. My least favorite stuff, there's some lomography film out there that I've seen give bad results. I'm also not a huge fan of the stuff I've seen of things like Revlog film or like experimental film like that just has like light leaks and special effects and stuff like that. Are you planning to cover music related tech like cassettes or records? Asks lovely Jovely Spitfire. I like records and cassettes, but I don't have like a huge experience with them. Whereas film and stuff, I mean, I've worked in labs and I've shot it and developed it and played around with cameras and everything. So there is stuff like Super 8 that involves cassette tapes, and so hopefully in the future I'll be able to cover some of that stuff in relation to how it works with like cassette tapes. Is it possible to film in low light places like clubs or at night with Super 8 film? Asks Gail Jonathan. Usually. I mean, it can be kind of experimental and kind of fun to play around with, but you can get like 500 ISO Super 8 film, and you can get Super 8 cameras that have XL shutters that let in a little more light on their exposures. So you can usually use those to shoot in lower light. Is 50D available as reversal film? So 50D is Super 8 film, 16mm and 35mm motion picture film, but it is a color negative motion picture film, so you cannot get it as reversal. What's your dream emulsion? Asks Futigu. A high speed, higher ISO slide film would be really nice. Nobody's really making a 400 ISO slide film right now, and that would be really great. Peel apart instant film, I know people are trying to bring it back, but it's not necessarily going to be the same as FP100C, so like a true FP100C replacement would be also amazing because I missed that stuff and being able to use it as much. Do you have any experience with standard 8mm film? Asks Shadels. I haven't actually shot standard 8mm or regular 8mm or whatever you want to call it. Recently picked up a little camera in order to hopefully do some in the future and then do some video stuff on it, because I've talked about 16mm and Super 8, but I haven't really talked about regular 8, which kind of came in between those two. Can you go over 35mm movie cameras? Wants to know TK09098885. 35mm movie camera. Yes, I can. Again, there's like the amateur side of things, or at least the kind of more accessible on a budget side of things, and the much higher side of things for 35mm cameras, but you can get handheld ones like the Convas, which is a Soviet camera, and you can also get, there's a Bell & Howell one that's like a wind-up camera as well that would take 35mm motion picture film. What is my favorite ISO film? Wants to know Maldito Duende 2. There is like high contrast black and white stuff that is like 12 ISO, especially in 16mm. That stuff like looks amazing. So I love like a low ISO that can give you really cool looking results. Will you ever do a video on home developing or Instax? Says Stick People and Puff. I'm doing home developing right now. The Instax also, yes, probably. I'm more partial to Polaroids and stuff, but I recognize the significance of the Instax and how popular it is. What's the story of how you got into Polaroids? Asks Max Tell. There was a camera I got that was in the garage of my grandparents. I just wanted to know primarily kind of if it worked, but I also didn't have the money or the resources locally or anything to go buy film from what was the impossible project at the time, so it just kind of sat around. A few years later, when I moved to Toronto, I picked up a Polaroid camera. It was a Sun 660 that kind of has problems. Then I bought a first pack of film, and I decided I would only ever shoot it once because it was expensive, and here I am now having shot it way more than once. Would it be possible for Fuji to manufacture film that fits Polaroid cameras? Fuji could probably manufacture a great many things that people would love to see, but they definitely will not. They would not make Polaroid stuff because it's not their format, and Polaroid is making Polaroid stuff. Fuji is just gonna make Instax stuff. All right, so both rolls are loaded into the Patterson tanks now, which means that I can safely open this up and pull out two tanks, one with one roll and one with the other roll. Now I'm actually gonna take these tanks with the film loaded into them into the kitchen, and I'm going to develop the film. Okay, so my full kind of setup for this is that we have our chemicals and our vials here in order to do measurements, and also a thermometer and a funnel. And then over there are the two tanks with the actual film inside of it, ready to go. For actually developing expired film, it can be a little awkward, and usually you wanna kind of experiment and figure out what's best for how long you should develop the film for. So I'm gonna try a couple of different developers. I'm gonna try some T-Max developer, which I have here, and T-Max is usually used more for like the Tri-X and the T-Max films. And I'm also gonna use some HC110 developer. An HC110 developer is usually recommended for some more expired stuff. I'm also gonna use Codifix, and Codifix is used in the last step, which is fixing your film, which is done after the development process. And I'm not going to use a stop bath. And the stop bath is usually used between the developer and before the fix. And it's used in order to completely remove and stop the development process and clear any of the development chemicals off of the film 100% before you put in the fix. But you can also get away with just using some water and rinsing and then emptying the tank like once or twice. And you can use that in place of a stop bath when you're developing black and white film. And the fix I have already mixed here, and I have it ready to go in this jug, but we will be mixing some HC110 and some T-Max developer, and we will use some different ratios that are printed on the bottles for these developers. So a really standard developing temperature when you're working with these chemicals is 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
So we have our HC110 here, which is our really orange looking chemical, and we have our T-Max developer here, which is a clear chemical, and we're going to mix those and use one in one tank and then one in the other tank. I have my fix just kind of hanging out in a sink here that is a little bit higher than 68 degrees Fahrenheit in order to kind of warm that up because it is a little cool in my kitchen here. And then I have my tanks over here, of course. So we mix our T-Max developer at a ratio of 1:4, and it shows you here that you can mix an entire bottle of this for 5 liters, which would mean 1 part of developer for 4 parts of water. But you don't have to use all 5 liters. You can do some math and just kind of split it up and save some concentrate and just mix smaller batches as well. And the HC110 we're going to mix differently, and it gives you a whole bunch of different ratios that you can mix for and different dilutions. So I'm going to use dilution B on the bottle here, which is actually 1 part of developer to 31 parts water. And when I mix the HC110 developer, it's just going to be a one-shot developer. So I'm only going to use it once, and then I can discard it and pour it out. Now, in order to determine my kind of rough approximate development times, then we use a website called Massive Dev Chart, which is super useful, and you can kind of plug in a whole different variety of films and all sorts of different developers and chemicals that you can get into it, and it will give you different charts and times and different ways of developing your film. So before I do start, I'm going to answer just a couple questions here. Can you use current Super 8 film cartridges in cameras that were designed to record sound, asks Joe Nelly. Yes, you can. Super 8 sound cameras are kind of obsolete now in regards to the sound components on them, but there are some nice cameras that had sound components that are still nice cameras on on their own. They don't need Super 8 sound film in order to run, which you also can't buy anymore because it only existed for a few years, like decades ago. But you can still fit normal cartridges of Super 8 film into sound Super 8 cameras as well. So for our developing, we're going to develop our HC110 film tank here at 5 minutes, and we're going to develop our T-Max film tank back here for about 5 minutes and 45 seconds, based on some times that I got off of the massive dev chart. So first we're going to start off by loading up a jug of water here so that we have some nice 68 Fahrenheit water to go from. So I'm going to use the jug of water here that is just about 69 degrees Fahrenheit in order to help me mix the development chemicals. So I'm going to round up and mix about half a liter, which is 500 milliliters of both HC110 at dilution B and T-Max at 1:4. For HC110, we have 1 to 31. So in total, 32 parts of liquid go in to make the developer. So we're going to divide 500 milliliters by 32 parts, which means we need roughly 15 milliliters of HC110 and about 485 milliliters of water. So that is such a small amount of developer for HC110 at dilution B, like it's very not like a lot in there. So I'm going to mix that at about 485 milliliters of water approximately. So that is 500 milliliters of HC110 at dilution B. So I can open that up properly, and inside everything is sealed up. Now the film is just below this, and this is kind of a funnel piece that keeps everything light tight, so I can pour my chemicals into there and nothing will get ruined. So I'm going to start up a timer here and go for 5 minutes of development. And an important part while I'm developing is called inversions, or agitation of the tank. And agitation is actually rotating and moving the tank every so often each minute of development to kind of keep the chemicals moving around and make sure that nothing's kind of, bubbling or sticking to the film or interrupting an even development. But you don't want to move it too fast, or else you're going to get different results. And that can be things like surge marks, as the chemicals just kind of move through the sprockets on the film really quickly, and they will actually leave elements on the film. So I'm going to agitate for about 10 seconds every minute. And I'm going to start developing now as I pour in the chemicals, and I'm going to start the timer right now. And I'm kind of spinning it, rotating it, but not too fast, but just kind of nice and evenly and gentle for 10 seconds. Perfect. And you want to set it down kind of nice and firmly at the end of each agitation to kind of knock off any air bubbles that might be sitting on your film. Could you possibly go more in depth with the avant-garde film stocks? Wants to know Brawler 197. So the avant-garde film stocks are things like lomography stuff or the Revlog stuff that are not necessarily things that I have access to easily locally from my camera stores, but there are some that I can still pick up and shoot, maybe kind of save you guys some money in terms of what's actually worth shooting and what is maybe best to avoid. Can you possibly do a video on Polaroid land cameras, asks Steven Maldonado. Yes, Polaroid land cameras are the instant cameras that take peel apart instant film. And unfortunately the peel apart film has been discontinued largely from Fuji. I do want to focus on it in the future, but it just takes a lot to want to use up those packs of films that are sitting in my fridge. Now this is almost done here, so we're kind of counting down the final 15 seconds here. And I'm going to get some water running in order to use it instead of stop bath again. And I'm just going to do like a rinse and shake and then empty and then a rinse again. So it's been 5 minutes of developing for that. So I'm just going to dump that out because it was a single-use developer and it's okay to dump down a drain. So now I'm just rinsing and I'm going to agitate. So that's good for one. So now that it's been rinsed and it's stopped developing, but it still needs to finish the development process and go through the fixing stage. So I have the fix here that's been sitting in water that's brought it up to a better temperature. And so I'm just going to pour it into this just like the developer. And the fix is going to sit in here for between 5 to 10 minutes. And you can't really overfix the film, so I can let it sit in here while I proceed to mix the T-Max and develop the other tank, and then I can switch the fix from one tank to the other. And I'm going to do just an initial agitation here of the fix in the tank. I don't have to agitate it as frequently, but every few minutes I might. So while that's being fixed, I'm gonna do my math here, and I'm gonna mix 500 milliliters of T-Max Developer for my other tank. So we're gonna do 100 milliliters of T-Max Developer to 400 milliliters of water. So 100 milliliters. And then my water here will go to 400 milliliters. 400. So now that's 500 milliliters of T-Max Dev. And similar to what I did before, we're going to go for about 5 minutes and 45 seconds. And just like the other one, agitating. What 16 millimeter camera that you recommended for beginner? Asks Sagaru. For beginners on 16 millimeters, the Bolexes are great. Biulu, the French cameras, which are also some really solid cameras out there. Some of them will take batteries, of course, as well, and sometimes you can get battery issues with older batteries. And then below that is the Krasnogorsk 3, the K3, which are Soviet cameras, and they are super questionable, but usually the cheapest and most accessible to get, but they can also jam or scratch your film a little more frequently than like a Bolex or the Bialulu French cameras would. Can chemicals for development be reused? Asks Duncan Thrax. Yes, you can use the fix for up to 120 rolls or 135 rolls of 36 exposure or 35 millimeter film. So stuff like fix you can definitely use for quite a long time, and the developer as well you can use multiple times until you really start to notice kind of diminished effects. How many millimeter are there for film and what difference does it make? Asks Henrislet. There are a bunch of different millimeters. There's 8 millimeter film, there's 16 millimeter film, there's 9.5 millimeter film, there's 35 millimeter, 65 millimeter, and it just refers to different size, but the bigger you go in terms of the film size means the higher resolution image. So the bigger the film, the bigger the millimeter, the more resolution or the greater the quality of image can be captured. Alright, so our T-Max is done. And I'm going to use this funnel to pour it back into my bucket here because I can reuse that. And I'm going to do my rinse just like the other one. And the other one is also about done fixing as well, so I can use my funnel to pour it into that. Agitation here for a little bit. So now fix is going into the smaller tank now that the bigger tank has been fixed. The bigger tank also has to go into like a final rinse. So I'm gonna let that sit under a tap in my bathroom while I finish this one up. And it's just gonna sit there while some water rinses over the film in the tank. So I'm just gonna jump away and do that. So the other tank is rinsing in the bathroom in the sink, and this one just has to go through the fix process and then it can be rinsed as well. How do you scan Polaroid pictures? Asks Luke Goodman. You can do them just on like pretty much any flatbed scanner and you can get okay results. But for Polaroids, if you're just kind of looking to have a digital version of your Polaroids, then Polaroid Originals actually makes an app on the phone, and then a cell phone will, of decent quality, capture your Polaroid and turn it into a digital photo for you. Could 600 films can use in Joycam? Angelo Roa. No, the Joycam, it takes different sized film than the Polaroid 600 cameras did. They are not compatible at all with each other. So unfortunately the Joycam and the Captiva are all dead Polaroid camera formats. As a fellow gear addict, where do you draw the line when it comes to acquiring too much stuff? Asks Young Lil Diesel. I should have drawn the line a long time ago, but I haven't. I don't know, probably taking a deeper look at what I actually shoot and what I actually need, or what I'm actually going to use, is a good rule. Do you know when the new Kodak Super 8 camera will get released? Asks Joshua Hurd. No, I do not. Nobody does, and I think between you and me, Kodak will never ever release that camera. Why is film so expensive to develop now? Asks Chris Byer. Decades ago, film was the only thing that existed for, primarily the only thing that existed for shooting film. There was a lot of it being made, there were a lot of places that developed it, and there were a lot of people that used it. So that was able to drive costs down, but as less people use it, prices go up. That is my understanding of economics. Can you do a video on Caffeinol, asks Thecamore. Yes, at some point I would love to because it's kind of cool. Caffeinol is a film developer that is made from instant coffee, and a lot of people use it out of convenience and also just because of the look that it can give you on your film. Best Super 8/60mm scan framing options, asks Fernando Gomarin. I don't know what that refers to. Scan framing options. An overscan is a lot of fun where you can see like the sprockets on the film and just the border. Everybody loves the border. All right, this is pretty much done. So I'm just gonna grab this and throw it into a funnel and back into my bucket here, container. Whoops. So once your film is done in the fix, then you can remove the lid. You can take a peek at the film if you want to as well, but it means that your film is done the chemical developing stages of the process. So this one has been rinsing, so that's our first tank, which had the HC110 developing film inside of it. So I have a little bit of this, which is like stabilizer, photo flow kind of stuff that I will just pour. It's kind of like a soapy solution, and I just pour just a little bit in. If I throw some water in here and rinse it for a bit. So now it's kind of bubbly. When I pull it out and let it dry, it should dry without like marks or drying wet spots on the film. Okay, so now that that's been sitting in the tank for just a little bit, I will dump that and I will remove the actual film. So you can either roll it off the actual reel, or you can kind of like twist it and then slide that off. And you'll also see kind of exactly how it goes onto the reel like that. But we can pull some of it off and you can actually see, hopefully, that we do indeed have images on the film that we developed.
Alright, so the film was developed successfully, and I took it into the lab, and I got the rolls scanned, and I have the negatives here just in protective sleeving that I have. So I'm going to take a look at them on the light table, and then I'm going to take a look at the scans and see kind of exactly what the results are, and kind of talk a little bit more about it overall. So the black and white film that was hand developed has now been taken into the lab and scanned and has been returned to me. This Plus X is a little rough now that I've gotten to take a better look at it after it's been taken out of the tanks and dried, and I'm just taking a look at it in protective sleeving on this light table. Based on the coating on the edge numbers, it was made in 1997 and it hasn't necessarily been stored well since then. The negatives are pretty flat, so even though they were developed with different kinds of developers, they do both look pretty similar here. The HC110 film though does have a little less fogging on the base than the T-Max developed film has. As film ages, it will become somewhat foggy and it will become less transparent in the unexposed areas. And this can really reduce the quality of shots on the film. HC110 as a developer can have better effects with expired stuff though. I can also see where my Pentax had some issues and I have some unexposed frames and some blurry shots on these rolls. So the untouched scans from the lab are very, very flat. There's not much contrast here or like any range of tones in the image. There's also more grain here than you would normally want to see in a film that has an ISO of 80, and that's also a result of the film's age and storage. Doing some editing and kind of trying to bump up the contrast does take a bit of work as well because the images are so flat, but there is a little bit to work with here. So it's definitely not perfect. The results aren't great, but it's something that I kind of wanted to test out and play around with and kind of see what I would get out of it, especially as an example of home developing for the first time here on the channel. But of course, home developing with fresh film can give you really normal and really great results. So what have we learned? Well, this stuff is pretty expired. Could I get better results with it? I could probably get better results with it. And in terms of playing around with it and rating it at some different ISOs and doing more tests, and I do have like 200 feet of it, so I gotta do something with it. But I hope overall this has been interesting, and it's kind of an example of some stuff that I want to do in the future, because definitely home developing, there's so much to cover. And also, this brings this year to a close. This is the last video that will go up of the year, or the first video that will go up of 2020, and so it gets me thinking about what's coming next year and what's in the future. Analog resolutions. Do it! 2019 has been a long, crazy, weird year. But amidst all of that, I have managed to make a whole bunch of videos and cover a whole bunch of topics. It has been really crazy to kind of see it grow as much as it has. And of course, thank you to everybody who supports the channel or talks about the channel or shares the videos or watches the videos or has subscribed. I mean, I don't have a roadmap for the year. I'm either gonna make more stuff or the same amount of stuff or maybe slightly less stuff sometimes. I'm gonna take a break for a little bit in the beginning of January and kind of think about it. I'm gonna try and shoot more rolls of film that I haven't shot before and use different cameras that I haven't used as much. I'm gonna finish this roll of film in this old 3D camera, and then we're gonna talk about Viewmaster discs because I'm excited for it. I'm gonna shoot a roll of Super 8 film on this Nikon R10 because it's a great camera and it's a tank and I got it to work after paying very little money for it. I'm gonna get rid of a bunch of stuff that I've accumulated over the year that just doesn't work or that I don't need. I'm gonna develop more film, I'm gonna talk about more stuff, and I'm gonna think about what it is exactly that people are interested in about film. I'm gonna tell myself that I'm not gonna buy cameras that I don't need, but I'll probably end up accumulating a bunch of other stuff anyways. I really want to shoot Ektachrome on Super 8 and also 4x5 and medium format because they just announced it and it's coming out really soon. Or it's out already, I don't remember. I'm gonna think about Fuji's peel apart instant film for Polaroid land cameras. I'm gonna involve friends and go out and do more videos that are maybe a little bit different from this, probably at some point. I'm gonna shoot a video on film for the channel, entirely on film, sync sound. That's gonna be something I will do. I'm gonna see how big this can get and I'm gonna figure out what's possible. This year, next year, maybe the year after that. There's a lot of effort. I'm gonna ask for help with the videos when I need it. I'm gonna email somebody at Kodak and ask about the Super 8 camera and we're gonna find out together. I'm gonna have more fun with the stuff that I'm making and I'm gonna encourage people to do more of the stuff that they want to do as well. I have to thank a bunch of places and people and things or something that probably don't necessarily always watch the videos or think that much about it, but have impacted it whether they know it or not. I gotta give credit and a shout out to Downtown Camera for processing and scanning all my still photography film. And for the people who work there that I love and that I can rely on, and you know who you are. For Niagara Custom Lab, purely for existing and for just doing what they do all the time, because so much is possible when there is a motion picture film lab in the city in which you live. And to Lyft, also just for existing, for the people who I can talk to endlessly when I go in there just to buy a roll of Super 8 film. So together we're gonna keep doing this and keep watching these and keep talking about it. And we're gonna shoot film and use cameras and look at weird stuff. And I'm gonna start a film lab and you can send me your film. I'll give it some thought. You want weird film merch? We'll do weird film merch. You gotta let me know. Put a thing in the comments if you want that or this or more of literally anything. So let me know what you want to see and what you want to do and make and shoot and record and build or repair. There's a link in the description to the Patreon if you want to see and look and share that around. And I am Noah, and this is Analog Resurgence.